That's enough looping bullshit. Someone say something so I can see that the messages are coming through. Okay, cool, that's the right message window. People don't hang around long, do they? Oh, Daniel, how's it going? Hearing me okay? Seems to be the audio coming through. Right, I'm not getting hugely drunk, but I am having a drink. Because why the fuck not? Wait and see if anyone else shows up. Yeah, I know I did the other one on a Friday night, but Saturdays are as good. But I've got an interview thing tomorrow morning, so shan't be staying up too late or drinking too much. Just enough to be interesting. It's the plan. Oh, done nothing but sleep today. It's been terrible. Right. How can I entertain you this evening? I'll leave the news for a bit. If you want to ask me anything, drop it in the chat, or I've got an Ask FM. That's my profile on there. Grimachu. If you've got anything you want to ask me anonymously, you can slip it on there. Yeah, Labour Party conference, climate protest, stuff to talk about. And we should get the Supreme Court ruling at some point this week, if that all works out. Let's go have a look at the news sites. Go on then, spam the existence of the stream, bring me some more fodder. And as usual, anything I do tends to get demonetized, so if you want to help out, the information is very slowly scrolling along the bottom. I think I still need one more subscriber to make it enough that will actually pay out, which would be useful, because I had a rather unexpected bill. When I took my car in for a service, they kind of ambushed me with a new cam belt, which made it about 3 times as expensive as it should have been. So that was fun. I've got some pay ahead of time for some work, so hopefully that'll work out. But yeah, gotta cover that. What a week! What a week! Anyone been up to anything? Any games or anything? People keep popping in and popping off. Don't know. What can you do? Let's see if opening Discord won't fuck up my camera like it has been. Doesn't seem to have. Alright, so drop a link in there. Oh well, people can always watch back on record, so what do we want first? Tackle the news? We'll tackle some questions first. Those might be better when I'm drunker, at least slightly tipsy. You know, the whole honesty through booze thing. So let's look at the news then. Right. So it's a Labour Party conference ahead of what will probably be a general election. Labour slipped into third place in polling behind the Liberal Democrats, which is always fun. But they'd still win more seats than the Liberal Democrats because our party political system, our electoral system, they're all screwed, basically completely unrepresentative. But what can you do? Whoever gets into power sees that they're favoured by the system that exists, so they never want to change it. But we'll see, I guess. But yeah, the Liberal Democrats have absorbed a few of the right wing of Labour and a few of the left wing of the Tories. They're now, despite doing pretty poorly in the last few elections, they've got quite a lot of representation now, which is peculiar, and they look like they'll do well picking up the Remainer vote at the election, which is, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, really, at this point. And it's just also horribly unpredictable. It's probably going to end up being yet another coalition government, which means it's likely to have to be Lib Dem Labour in order to kind of carry a majority. But Liberal Democrats don't particularly want to work with Labour, and Labour's Brexit position is schizophrenic at best. And I think that's been really well represented by the fact that they tried to oust Tom Watson, who's the deputy leader of the Labour Party. There was the push by the members to get rid of him because he has been, well, they would characterise it as disloyal to Corbyn, which is a uncomfortable language to use around the leader of a political party, I think. It becomes a bit demagogy, really, when you start doing that. It's been rejected, but it still shows the division, because Watson has been very vocally anti-Brexit and wanting the Labour Party to be more vocally anti-Brexit. So the attempt to oust him appears to have been from Corbyn loyalists who will excuse anything that he does, including all this fence sitting. He must have so many splinters up his arse. So they'll excuse anything that Corbyn does and attack anyone that even differs with him slightly on anything. And of course the Lexiters, the people who think you can have a left-wing Brexit that will somehow be better for everybody. Doesn't seem especially likely to me, must be said. Yeah, Labour's got all these ambitious plans, but all these plans take money, which means you need a prosperous nation in order to take those plans forward, which you're not going to get with a Brexit. So you're not going to have the money to do any of the wonderful things that you want to do, and many of them are wonderful. So what's unbelievable is that the Tories are doing so well, relatively speaking, under Boris. I mean, they're in complete disarray, got no clue, no plan, lying, cheating, proroguing Parliament, and yet they still, command a reasonable amount of support. It just shows how tribal it is, even when Brexit is breaking down the old tribal boundaries. People don't vote on policy or what's good or what's best. Yeah, it's really challenging a lot of my ideals about democracy because people are so fucking dumb. Well, not even dumb. They just don't think about it at all. They just see red or blue and take the box, and that's it. It's just maddening. Well, now let's see then what else is in the news. That was the big one. I mean, the climate protest. I don't have a lot to say about that. It's nice to see that people care about it. It's nice to see sort of mass movements about this sort of thing. Unfortunately, everybody and their nan is trying to hitch their own particular wagon and their own ground axes to the whole climate protest thing, and I don't think that's especially useful. If you're going to have climate policies, I think they need to be about climate. A lot of Americans are reeing about socialism being smuggled in under green policies. Yeah and no. Tackling this kind of thing requires governmental intervention, requires governmental scale projects, things that only governments can do. and requires us to take a more collective socialist stance on a lot of things, because that's the only practical way to tackle a lot of these issues. But everyone's so shit scared of those words. People would rather burn, apparently. Who can understand it? Thomas Cook, the sort of package tour holiday company over here, is in trouble. I mean, who still uses travel agents, really? Everyone does it online through, various processes on there. It's cheaper and easier. So they've got a huge monetary shortfall, which means that they are basically screwed, might go under, which could leave a lot of people stranded in other countries, which would be nice. So the government's being asked to step in and bail them out. I think the government's mind is on other things at the moment, and I don't think that's appropriate, but we do want to make sure everyone gets home. Some people have been arrested at these climate protests, but not for anything really terrible from what I can see. Maybe they're smoking pot a little too close to the policeman, or pushing and shoving or something. Who knows? It's been weird, actually. All this fuss over Northern Ireland, right? And concern over the re-emergence of sectarian conflict. There's been an increase in sectarian behaviour in Scotland. Sectarian marches in Glasgow in particular. They've gone off without incident, but there has been fighting and brawling and other stuff going on. It always used to, and the sectarian violence used to get down as far as sort of Manchester, Liverpool sort of area, really. So I'm wondering if the resurgence of the Troubles could lead to a broader kind of sectarian violence in Scotland and other places, particularly since it's often tied to the kind of nationalist movements, those who want independence for Scotland and so on. Be curious to see what actually happens there. Oh, there's this cockamamie scheme doing the rounds on the news today. I've been napping and watching the news. It's basically all I've been doing today. But this idea of making sure every child spends a night in the great outdoors. Enforced camping is this idea. I don't know that that's a good idea. I mean, some kids will get a lot out of it. A lot of them won't. And who's going to pay for it all? The kids that live in the country, odds are they've already had that experience. They don't need it, which means the kids that do need it will be coming from the cities out into the country where they got no clue. And I don't see that the benefit matches the cost particularly. It just seems like one of those things. I mean, it's a nice idea, and if you had infinite resources to throw about, why not? But kind of making it almost mandated, it just seems very, very odd. Another odd one just came up at the Labour conference. The idea that menopausal women should get more flexible work hours. Why? I mean, a certain amount of flexibility, and women tend to use flex time and so on more around pregnancy and various other things, childcare issues and so on, but why menopausal? Yes, this is a Labour policy to end the stigma, to train managers so they know how to cope. It's just seems a bit odd. I mean, I guess it's something that everyone goes through, but why is that a policy? Why do you need any more flexible hours than you already have? I don't know. There's not really a lot of information there. Bunch of guns stolen in Northern Ireland. They're only shotguns, double barrels, pretty much. It's not a huge worry. People still have those for farming and so on. The Saudis have vowed to respond to the attack on their oil sites. So far as I know, we still don't know who's actually behind that. They're blaming Iran. America's blaming Iran. Just what we need. Another quagmire war in the Middle East. Of course, Saudi are our allies, even though they're horrible bastards, so we'll probably get dragged into it as well. That would explain the massive queues at the garage today, though. A World War II veteran, aged 97, has parachuted in over Arnhem, so there's a big sort of commemoration thing. Oof, I wouldn't want to do that at 97. I wouldn't want to do it now. Come to that. Hi Unscripted, how's it going? We're just going through the news at the moment. Don't expect me to get horribly, horribly drunk this evening. Just a little bit. That's interesting. Right, if you have a catalytic converter on your car, as a lot of them do, you may notice it getting thieved. Apparently they're getting stolen a lot more. So the rates of theft of catalytic converters have almost doubled because of the value of the precious metals used in catalytic converters. I'm trying to remember what the metals are actually used. Catalytic converters, precious metal. Platinum, palladium and rhodium, which are all very rare and therefore expensive. Of course, it's small amounts, but if the price of precious metals is going up, you know, it makes sense that would be the case. So yeah, maybe make sure your car alarm works in case anyone's trying to blank a catalytic converter. There's big problems with people stealing heating oil out here in the country because we don't get line gas, so you have to have tanks of heating oil, and some people will come up and pump it out and run away with it and sell it. Bastards. Fortunately not happened to me, but it has happened quite a bit. Walmart is ceasing sale of e-cigarettes. This whole thing is stupid. It might be that there's a few cases of issues. This is pretty much all down to black market dealing. It might not be great for you, it might not be fantastic for you, but it's a hell of a lot better than smoking, and a lot of people, including my worse half, have gotten off smoking thanks to e-cigarettes. So I'm hoping this doesn't spread too far, particularly the bans on flavours and things like that, because it really does help people quit smoking, and that seems worth it to me. So the NHS advice has remained the same, so that's something at least. Yeah, Brexit. So Johnson's saying, "Oh, we're making progress," and the EU are making vaguely nice comments, at least relatively speaking. But it really doesn't look like anything is really in the offing. It's all sound and fury. I don't think a deal is possible. I still don't think Parliament would go for a deal. I mean, you've got the hard right Brexiteers like Marc Francois saying, "Oh, we won't vote for any deal," and then of course you've got the Remain side who won't vote for a deal either because they want to remain. So it's pointless. The whole thing is utterly pointless. A huge waste of time and money and energy. It's just revoke and move on. Quite frankly, there's no democratic mandate for a no-deal Brexit. There's no democratic mandate, strictly speaking, for any Brexit. But here we all are, 3.5 years later, still fucked. But what can you do? And this proroguing of Parliament, we'll find out this week if that's illegal. And if it is, what happens next? The government saying, well, we'll just suspend Parliament again. Comments sometimes aren't posting because they have new stricter rules about things for some reason. I will try and change it to make sure I can see everything. Okay, your last comment probably didn't show because it had swearing in it, and that's a bad, naughty, no-no word. So, let's see. You say, I should have gotten my Actual Fucking Monsters in the mail today and got the PDF of the new expansion the other night. Cool. Yeah, it's probably because it contains swearing, and YouTube's being a bitch about that sort of thing lately. A right bitch about that sort of thing lately. Yeah, it's interesting times. I think we need a written constitution. We need reform of our electoral system, and there needs to be some kind of upheaval in the political parties. But I don't see any of that happening in the near future. I think it'll just continue to be business as usual, really, and it'll slowly get back to the same old norms, unfortunately. So it's an opportunity for change. I just don't see that it's going to happen. What was funny to see, though, was there's the UKIP conference as well, going on in Wales, I think, in Newport, and the leader didn't bother to show up because of low ticket sales. So he's already having problems, and the Brexit Party has completely stolen their thunder. They're a total irrelevance at this point. They're dead. Stop! He's already dead. So much for the internet shitlords bringing in so much for the internet shitlords bringing in, a whole swathe of UKIP support. That didn't happen somehow. Seems like people like that aren't keen to sign up to political parties, which I think was kind of obvious going right the way back to Gamergate. People didn't want to sign up for anything broader than one particular cause, and it's kind of heartening in a way, disheartening in another, I guess. Hi Hat, how you doing? Hi Mr. Charisma. When Boris Blondie Johnson became Prime Minister, he said he would sort out the care crisis. How would you sort out the care crisis and social care system? Well, he hasn't done that. He hasn't done much of anything, really. The basic problem is one of demographics. Now, we can't carry on as we are. We can't just import immigrants forever to fill in the gap. But once we get past the baby boomers, things should settle down a bit, and we should be able to get to more of a sustainable system. I think it should be brought back out from privatisation, because that's where a lot of the problems have come in. Health services shouldn't be private by default, I don't think, ever. If you want to pay extra for something better, then fair enough. But by default, it should be centralised, because then you get benefits from economy of scale and so on, and you can provide universal provision. It's just basically more economical. So for now, I would carry on pretty much as we are, but taking more taxation and spending more on social care until we're past the baby boomer bulge. Try saying that 10 times fast. And then we should look to setting things up in a more sustainable, cost-efficient manner. Some of that will come from technology. There's been a lot of effort on prolonging life, but not a lot of effort on prolonging quality of life. So some of that is encouraging research in different areas, because if we can keep people fitter and more capable for more of their life, then they depend less on the care system. And we will have to advance the mandatory retirement age. That'll have to go up. Not to the extent, I think, that the Tories want to do it, but to some extent. And I say if through a combination of those things, I think that's how we get past that. And then we're looking too far into the future. We'd have to know what the situation was there. I mean, automation is some of it. Economy of scale is some of it. Immigration for carers is some of it. Renationalising social care is some of it. There's a whole bunch of stuff that would need to be done, I think. We covered those stories. Anything in technology news? Facebook has suspended tens of thousands of apps. I don't know if that's good or bad. They're bound to have hit people. They're bound to have hit people that didn't deserve it. It always does. Am I missing messages from you again? Oh, the internet should be a 100% unrestricted free speech zone, and that has come up. In as much as possible. I mean, I can understand not censorship exactly, but controlling access to content. You know, like not paywalling, but age walling and stuff. Certain things, and there is some speech that can rise to the level of harm, like direct calls for violence, that sort of thing. But there's not a lot. But that's not the world we live in. You know, the public square is in private hands, as I'm fond of saying. So they're also on about deep learning algorithms and AI revolutionizing health. There are some interesting things that you can find out if you can crunch a sufficient amount of data and if you can correlate that data. So there's all kinds of efficiencies that could be made that way. Whether it actually turns out that way, I don't know. AI is a bit fickle, and the trouble with using learning algorithms is you don't necessarily know why it's come out with the results that it has. There was a fairly early neural network learning algorithm that was being trained to recognize male versus female faces. But it ended up actually training itself to detect something else entirely. I think pupil size, something like that. So with all their training images, it was getting 100% accuracy. And then they tried it, in the wild, and it just got things completely wrong. And it took them ages to figure out why it was, because you're not programming it, you're not telling it what to do. It's learning, but it's not necessarily learning what you're teaching it. It's very, very tricky. What would I put in a UK constitution? I'd just formalize a lot of the stuff that we supposedly already have, and I would define it. The main thing I would want would obviously be a right to free expression enshrined in law. I don't think we would ever be given one as free and open as the US right to free expression is, but I would like to have some more guarantees. We have some under the EU. Well, they've never got an EU constitution sorted due to blockading by, amongst other people, Britain. But there are conventions on rights and so on within the EU, which include rights to free expression and free speech and so on. So it's better than nothing, but I would rather have something, stronger than that. I'd like to throw up some barriers to the monitoring and spying that has been going on for some time. So I'd like constitutional enforcement of our rights to privacy and so on. Things like standard stuff, but I also think the great age of constitutions is no longer adapted correctly for the modern world, right? For all these people were radical and forward-thinking for the 1700s, they had no idea what the modern world would be like. It's one of the things that's a constant disappointment with America, sorry to say, but the American Constitution was very cleverly designed to be an evolving document, something that could be amended and changed and altered over time. But a lot of people treat it like it's the absolute gospel, that it cannot be questioned, that it's a singular act of brilliance that cannot be bettered or altered, which is why there's so few amendments and so many have been gone back on. But yeah, I think a constitution would need to properly define roles of politicians as well. Like, people don't understand that, and having it in bold language would be nice. So your MP is your representative, but they're also a technocrat to a degree. A rule by experts. Ideally, in an ideal world, doesn't work out that way. So they're not just there to do what you want them to do. They're there to do what they think is best for the country and what is best for you, in some circumstances, even if you disagree. And that needs to be neatly defined and made more obvious to people, because they don't get it. They don't understand that. Science. Okay, well let's go back to the climate protest, right? I don't think these kind of mass protests have any real genuine effect on policy or anything. They might bend a few minds, but the forces that are in play, the inertia that is in play around business and around politics and so much corruption that we have, everything is very short-term thinking. Nobody really cares about the long term. People will play up to their base if their base is ignorant of climate issues and other green issues. You've got a lot to overcome, and sheer people power doesn't do it unless it's actually people power. You know, you can march in your millions on the streets and it make no difference whatsoever to the Iraq War. It has made no difference whatsoever so far to the Brexit issue. When was the last time a mass protest had any really meaningful effect? I think the last time in the UK would have been poll tax riots. What, 1990? 92, was it? (1990) 31st March 1990. That's the last time, and some people will even argue the toss about that. But then you can look to the collapse of the Warsaw Pact countries one after another. That was mostly down to people power, but they were like tearing down the walls and, you know, winkling out the dictators. And they turned to the military onto their side. If you wanted to see real change, that's the kind of thing you need to see. And no, having guns wouldn't make any difference there. Yeah, Trump's a bit of a denier. I just despair whenever I think too much about it. It is important. We do have very little time, perhaps not quite as little as alarmists are pushing the buttons for, but sounding the alarm does tend to get people to do things. So it's hard to fault them for that. Everyone bigs up the threat, whatever it is. Nazis or postmodernism or whatever. Everyone inflates it. It doesn't mean these things aren't risks, aren't problems, aren't difficult, but personally I think it's better to be honest. But there's another school of thought that says it's better to make the problem seem as big as possible, and thereby somehow that forces people to action. Personally, I think when the wheels fall off your grandiose claim, people forget that there is a kernel of truth to it that is genuinely alarming in and of itself. So I tend to think honesty is the best policy. But I am a rare and dying breed. Okay, so they brought in a sugar tax over here, right? So the idea was that if soft drinks and so on had tons of sugar in them, they would have to reduce them or there would be a surcharge. And it's had a positive effect. Soft drinks have lost nearly a third of the amount of sugar in them. So, yay. But lacking the sugar from their soda, kids have taken to eating a lot more sweets, and adults have taken to eating a lot more sweets. So they're making up the difference by consuming a lot more sugary food. So where does it stop? This is the question. Do you say, right, we will need controls on the amount of sugar in foods and sweets as well? Okay, what then? People start buying bags of sugar? We're making sweets at home, selling them on the black market? Where does it stop? Can you educate people out of it? That's the question, I think. But it's always difficult. Instinct is always difficult to overcome. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try, but yeah. A bit of a scandal today as well. So children who are undergoing cancer treatment in the UK are being denied access to new cancer drugs because we are extremely cautious and stringent in Europe as a whole and in Britain in particular about drug trials, human trials, whether we consider a drug to have been, genuinely shown to have a positive effect and so on. And so we're really cautious about it. There's also the matter that a lot of these are experimental and therefore quite expensive. and the NHS runs on a triage system, so on a level of need, really, rather than anything else. And if it's high cost, then you're taking away treatment from other people. It's not perfect, but it's better than the weight of your pocketbook determining whether you get treatment or not. But as a result of both economy issues and stringency, kids are being denied access to cancer drugs. So we're into a moral debate here. Do we allow experimental drugs to be used on kids in the hopes of giving them a longer life or forcing their cancer into remission? Do we relax our standards? And then where else do we relax our standards? Oh, that's new. Okay, this is the drug that I take, sertraline. A study of patients taking the common antidepressant sertraline throws new light on how it works, and the first thing it does apparently is reduce anxiety symptoms. So before it affects your depression, it affects your anxiety. I can't say that's necessarily been my experience with the drug. Hang on, that's the generic name. Let me look up what it's called in the States and elsewhere for you. Zoloft. Okay, so that's what I'm on. A fairly hefty dose of that. I think I'm one off the highest dose. Fantastic. So apparently it reduces your anxiety symptoms first, and then as a knock-on effect after that reduces your depression. What I've found personally is that I still get very anxious. I get heart palpitations and things, which isn't pleasant. But it really, really blunts and flattens out all my emotions. So I've had various things happen recently that should have upset me a lot more than they have. And I'm trying to unpick whether that's the drugs or maturity or not giving a fuck anymore or what it is. But I would rather feel nothing than feel grinding grief and wanting to top myself, quite frankly. And just for shits and giggles, it's worth pointing out that that drug and one of the other ones that I'm on are already in short supply due to various pharmacies and so on stockpiling in case of a no-deal Brexit, and will be harder to get post a no-deal Brexit. So, the drug I need to live and to cope with life is likely to dry up in a very stressful and otherwise horrible situation. So, I've got personal skin in this fight, not just political skin. What else have we got? Oh, I don't want to talk about that. There's an ongoing story about a girl who was at university and ended up committing suicide because she was kind of registered for mental health treatment at home, but not where a university was. The university didn't pick up on her, and it's just shit. It's a whole shitty situation. Mental health care, I mean, everywhere, man. I have people coming to me, talking to me because I'm so open about it, right? And everywhere in the world, it seems, mental health care provision is just terrible. It's either massively expensive or not available at all or not suitable to people with individual problems, which almost all mental health problems are. It's just shit. Hat says, good to hear that sertraline's working for you. SSRIs never did it for me. I mean, yeah, like I say, it just kind of blunts and flattens everything and kind of prevents me expressing emotion a lot or feeling it. Or it's almost like emotions are inauthentic when I'm on the drug, right? But again, it's still better than wanting to kill myself. I'm not dissing it. If they've told you to be on drugs, take your pills, okay? Think of it like a plaster cast and a broken limb or something. But yeah, the combination I'm on at the moment works. It's not perfect, nothing ever is, but it's better than wanting to die. It's dark turns this evening. Louis Theroux is the subject of a documentary rather than the documentary maker. I shall have to go and see that. The whole Justin Trudeau thing. It was ages ago. Is it the man he is now? Is it the policies he pursues? Is it worth putting in a genuinely, probably nasty right-wing government just to spite him for wearing brown face years ago? I don't know. But then would he extend any kind of forgiveness to anyone in his political opposite number that would do the same thing? That's the question. I very much doubt it. Mr. Charisma, would you offer an alternative to CBT? I take it you mean cognitive behavioural therapy and not cock and ball torture. I would offer alternatives to both. CBT is basically all the NHS offers on a kind of basic level. It's a one-size-fits-all solution. It's primarily talk therapy with various exercises and things you're supposed to do that modify your thinking. It doesn't really work for me. There were a couple of exercises which were more kind of distancing yourself from your emotions and your mental illness and processing them on a more rational basis, if that makes sense. Those were useful, but other than that, it has been largely fucking useless for me. I did see a private therapist for a while, thanks to help from the family, who did humanistic therapy, contracting, specialised in male psychology. He was a lot better. I think it's another one of these cost-benefit things, right? I understand why the NHS operates the way that it does, why it is that this isn't a priority, because it costs a lot and people don't generally necessarily get better. But if you do want to improve people's quality of life, get them back to work, get them on an even keel and so on, you need to offer something more better than pills and CBT, right? You need to offer individualized treatments. You need a variety of therapists with a variety of approaches, and that's just not how it works. But at least we've got something. Even if you have to wait 3 months to be seen or whatever, it's still better than nothing. Ugh, morons messaging me. Fuck off, morons. But yeah, I think you need something more. You need something different. Right, let's see if there's anything on the old Ask FM, shall we? It's World Gratitude Day. What's something you're grateful for? I'm terrible at expressing gratitude for things because I find it embarrassing, and I find people thanking me for things or helping me out or good job, Grim, or whatever. I find that embarrassing as well. I find it very hard to cope with these sorts of things. So, who the fuck's idea was it to have a World Gratitude Day anyway? What am I grateful for? Pharmaceuticals, distractions, gaming, RPGs, the ability to make at least something of a living doing something that I used to love. He said cryptically. What's something you've always wanted to try but have been too scared to? Things that scare me are things I don't want to try. So I don't think there is an instance of that. I would like to travel more, but not actually the travel bit. So I guess I would like to arrive more. I would like to see some of these places in other countries and so on, but without the travel bit. I cannot stick traveling. So I don't want to, because I hate travelling, because it scares me, but I would love to be able to just arrive somewhere, teleport in or whatever, some kind of quick, painless form of travel, so that I could see some exotic places like temples in India or the step pyramids in South America or whatever else it might be. Do you think money can buy happiness? No, but it can buy drugs and prostitutes, and that's pretty much the same thing. A mysterious smiley face. What things are you interested in nowadays? Post-apocalyptic scenarios outside the norm. Gaming mechanics that involve changing the world and the situation, sort of reflecting the impact of players on their environment. Enlightenment thought. Trying to extract, understand, and separate the things within various occult and religious traditions that make them appealing to people, and just trying to sort of dissect them and find a useful, non-stupid way of employing them. Like I think one of the big things about occult and religious traditions is the stories, right? You've got your just so stories, you've got your moralistic stories. Basically a crude and early form of Star Trek is how you could put it, I think. So storytelling is something that's useful. The problem, I think, arises when people take the stories as being true. So if we can find a way to take useful moral lessons or guidance or strength from stories and mythology without making the mistake of thinking they're real or true, that's kind of in the back of my head a lot lately. So I guess fairly deep thoughts on weird and esoteric things. Yeah, I've been thinking, actually, speaking of thinking, that a reason that a huge amount of progress in this sort of age of enlightenment, the 1700s, 1800s, through to the 1900s, the reason that so much progress was made by idle rich inventors and people who liked to tinker around with alchemy and so on was basically because they were wealthy enough that they didn't have to work and they were bored. And that's something that's kind of missing from the modern world, apart from a very few individuals, and a lot of them are too kind of distracted by everything to really make any progress. I think we're feeling the miss of the dilettante. Though, on the other hand, scientific knowledge and so on is so... If you want to understand physics, you have to go so deep now, you don't have time to devote to anything else. And yet we still see the occasional, really interesting or big advance comes when there's a kind of synergy between different fields of science. So all these hyper specialists are perhaps missing out. So maybe we need more cross-disciplinary communication. You'd think the internet would be helping that, but not so much. What's the most delicious dessert for you? I'm still a big fan of ice cream. Yeah. With fruit, nice and simple. Tinned fruit ice cream, can't be beat. Well, that's everything there. It's still censoring your comments, I can see now, because Daniel's clarified the AV thing as being the AV porn thing, and yet I can't see the mention of the word porn. I did not ask for this to be censored, by the way. As far as I was aware, the settings were all fine. I mean, I can see it in the behind-the-scenes dashboard, just not up here. The AV porn thing, the adult verification thing, it's just stupid, and it's still, so far, not happening. Maybe it never will, but it doesn't mean it's not a stupid idea. And it's not just porn. I have to keep reiterating that point to people, because the thing about making about porn is hard to defend to normies. It's they think it's sordid and exploitative and nasty in the way that, in many ways, it did used to be. And so when you're arguing for porn, you look like a filthy degenerate. Wow, which I am. Cheers. But but even so, it makes it harder to argue for. But it's not just about porn. It's about all manner of content. Right, well, I've run out of basic things to talk about. I've done my Ask FM, and we've been through the news. So, hit me. What are you interested in? What do you want to talk about? Anyone? Anything? Anybody? Speak to me. Keep me company. Tell me I'm pretty. Let's respam and see if we can get anyone else. Do I know what DNS is? Domain name server, right? Hair, moustache hair. Thank you. I do try. A little bit sweaty because I've been sleeping all day, but yeah. There we go. Yeah, tomorrow I'm supposed to be doing this interview with a guy about game systems, so it might be interesting. I'm not technical, so that will all sail over my head, Daniel. I know just enough to be dangerous, as they say. See if I can find the guy I'll be talking to. Pullman, who does the Longview RPG podcast or something along those lines. Apparently he started out on the TG board on 4chan and now does this blog and podcast thing. So yeah, we'll be talking for a couple of hours about game design and stuff. So I've just started doing the paid for series of videos on game design that I was going to do. So if you want early access to those, Patreon or Subscribestar, preferably Subscribestar. I need one more subscriber there. And I could get some fucking money. Alright, Sonic. Sonic's an old friend from back in the day, from the old gaming group and LARP and stuff. Total canehead. I never got on with pop myself. It just made me feel bored. Bored and nauseous. I can get that waiting for a bus. It's a lot cheaper. Playing Battlefield. Not my scene, man. I was playing Greedfall earlier. Bit of old school RPG action, but on a console. I was going to look something up for you. No, I can't do that. I was going to share some of the crazy from my YouTube comments. Yeah, you can tell these people you're an atheist and they'll just insist that you're a Satanist or something, or you're worshipping Saturn. And what was it here? This guy thought my twin raven pendant was an Illuminati symbol. What? It's a pagan symbol and I'm not even a pagan. What are you talking about? And he thinks I'm this Khazarian Jew. It's Jews who apparently aren't really Jews, but they usurped the Jews. So he hates Jews, but I'm like the worst version thereof for some reason. Apparently it's this big conspiracy theory. I did loads of research on conspiracy theories and I'd never run into this one before. But the Khazars were apparently this kind of Turkish ethnic group, and they're supposed to have supplanted authentic sort of Middle Eastern Jews, and so yeah, they're like double evil or something, like a double stuffed Oreo. I don't know. I just get crazy people commenting on things. They never have any arguments. That's the crazy thing. Did I hear that Greedfall is apparently bad because colonization or something? Probably, though I think its story isn't particularly sympathetic to colonization, I don't think. Nothing. Oh, colonialist fantasy. Yeah, but some people are countering that and saying that it's not really a game about colonialism, which I would agree. It's much more nuanced. So I don't think it's about colonialism. I think it takes place in a colonialist context about the settling of this new land and the politics and dealing with the natives and everything there. But it doesn't mean it endorses it. I think people have these knee-jerk reactions to stories that are placed within these contexts, thinking that just because you're telling a story in that context, you must somehow be agreeing that it's a good thing or something. There's a board game based on District 9 out, right? The film is a rather thinly veiled sort of allegory for apartheid, and the board game has nothing to do with that. It's more of a resource thing about exploiting the prawns and their technology and so on. And people were pitching a fit about that. I'm like, okay, why would it have to follow the same moral pattern as the film? Isn't there an interesting sort of resource thing with that kind of moral question in the background? If you play the exploiters, how would people exploit them? What lengths would they go to? It can be informative to play the role of the villain, I think. But what do I know? No, you're right, Sonic. Lots of people are far too... I hate the term snowflake, but they're oversensitive in the extreme. But what can you do about it? Not a lot, really. Well, you're on the beer. Let's see what the rum says. I don't know. I keep fighting, keep arguing. What I find so massively frustrating, though, is... I've used this comparison before, but let's do it again. Why not repeat myself? People, want the same reliable content from me that they normally get, don't they? That's what makes sense. So, you remember the Patriot Act? It was called the Patriot Act. So if you opposed it, clearly you were not a patriot, right? No, because it wasn't really about patriotism. It was about spying on people and eroding certain rights to privacy and so on. So it's just stupid to say that any objection to the Patriot Act was because you were a traitor and weren't a patriot or whatever else. Similarly... my friends. Similarly, if I complain about anti-harassment policies at conventions, it's not because I am pro-harassment, right? Naming a thing a certain way doesn't mean necessarily that that thing is about that, any more than the Patriot Act was about patriotism. The problem with the anti-harassment policies that a lot of conventions have brought in is that they're massively wide-ranging. And they make all kinds of statements about what you're allowed to sell, the presentations you're allowed to make, all of that kind of things. And yeah, there's any number of examples. You're sure to come up with your own. So it's consent thing, yeah. If you argue against that, are you against consent? Are you some sort of rapist or rape apologist or something? No. This document isn't really about consent. Consent's great. Consent's wonderful. I think you lose something when you formalize it to this extent, but the issue isn't the consent, it's the enforcement. It's the unreasonable demands. It's the prioritization of one person's momentary discomfort over everyone's long-term enjoyment. These are the problems, not the consent part. But if you argue against it, obviously, you must be against consent. Fucking stupid, and it's really, really aggravating. And I've got one person in my comments at the moment, Zenime or something, who's actually trying to understand me, where I'm coming from, but I think they've been trained wrong as a joke, because there's just so little understanding, even though hypothetically we're both on the same sort of political page. Mango and rum, it's quite nice. I don't know. I don't know if I want to get trapped into bitching about things again. It's been a rough old couple of weeks. Lost a couple of friends over this stuff. Yeah, you'd expect people to actually listen to you, but they don't. But fortunately, the drugs make me numb. Comfortably numb. So it doesn't bother me as much as perhaps it might. Maybe when the pills run out during Brexit, it'll all hit me, but we'll see. Is there anything actually going on in games news lately? Where would I even look these days? Morris's forum. Whose name escapes me? Ian World, that's it. I so rarely go there because it's usually D&D all the time. Meh. No, nothing really interesting. Boring. I clearly picked the wrong night to do anything. Well, you see, your free speech protections in the States do help against this sort of thing to an extent, but then we run into this problem that we've mentioned before, in that the public square is now in private hands. You know, it's Zuckerberg who owns the public square. It's been interesting though. They've basically tried to claim that they're publishers now, not a platform, which means they're essentially forfeiting their legal protection under the old internet legislation, which means if they're adopting the role of a publisher, then they're responsible for what's published on their platform, which would give them a free hand to censor and control what's on their platform, but it also makes them liable for what's published on their platform. So maybe they're hoping that if they adopt the role of a platform, they can censor with a free hand, and that when it gets tested in court, the court will decide that it's unreasonable and impossible to expect them to control the content on their sites. I suspect that's what the idea is, and then that way they can have the best of both worlds, backed by a court precedent. That's what I would suspect is going on, and they certainly have deep pockets and can afford the lawyers and so on to try and make that work. Whether it'll actually work out that way, I don't know. It seems like a high-risk strategy to me. I'll just see if you've lost any more of your messages. No. Just avoid the swearing and you should be fine. Not that I want you to, but just to make sure I can see your messages. Any breaking news anyway? Have the Saudis decided to blow shit up or anything? Hatman says the large social media is under some pressure to make up their minds about whether they're a public forum or publishers at the moment. There's a few lawsuits pertaining to that going on at the moment. Yeah, so some of it's probably positioning for that, but it's just I'm flabbergasted that they would choose to take the position that they're publishers, because it does make them responsible for anything that's put out on their platform. So it just seems an odd choice to me, unless they think that they can win in any of these cases that are brought, or maybe it's preparation to face down those cases and then they'll deal with the aftermath afterwards. I don't know. Yeah, clearly I picked the wrong night to do a stream. It's quiet, too quiet. Maybe I'll go and play some Greedfall on stream instead. Well, it's not too late to still do some gaming streaming, unless you meant an RPG stream. I really have to be in the right headspace to do that. I get an awful lot of performance anxiety running RPGs on stream. I keep meaning to do it and then just not feeling up to it. Hatman says, if they are publishers, they're obliged to curate their content. If they're public fora, they are constitutionally forbidden from censoring at their whim. That's their choice. Yeah. And I know which one I would take. Because, all it takes is one big incident that you're liable for, and you're in serious criminal and financial trouble. And I wouldn't have thought they'd want to take that route. But I guess, if it did go to court, and they did make the argument, look, it's impossible, it is physically impossible for us to control every aspect of all content on our platform at all times. Yeah, that's true. But then, if that does set that precedent, that's dangerous and a bit wishy-washy, and I'm not sure how you would ever enforce that in the future. This is not what we were promised. Never mind my rocket car, where's my full immersion VR? Where's information wants to be free? Where's Raish Bartmoss? God damn it. Yeah, I'm curious to see what the full version of the new Cyberpunk looks like. The game and the RPG. Amnesty the organisation, or a particular Amnesty? Sorry, I've got distracted because apparently Jim Butcher is being cancelled at the moment, which is interesting because he was always very in with the Fate guys, who are very right on, as you know. Apparently he's misogynistic trash, but now he's transphobic as well. It's because his wife got into an argument about whether trans people in sports is a thing that should exist, and he backed her up. So now apparently he's a transphobe and must be cancelled. There you go. No, I hadn't seen that. There's a lot of strikes going on at the moment in places that you wouldn't necessarily expect them. British Airways has a strike, and I think that's the first time the pilots have ever striked BA. Kickstarter apparently kicked up a stink because some of the people there wanted to unionise. And now this. You'd think Amnesty would still be making a lot of money in this woke world in which we find ourselves. Right, I'm going to hang about for another 5 minutes or so in case anything turns up. or anyone asks me anything super interesting. And then otherwise I'll go and play Greedfall until about midnight. So I need to be up and awake for about 11 tomorrow. So I probably shouldn't drink anymore. I'm such a lightweight. Some of that's the pills. Yeah. The positive side effect of SSRIs is being a cheap drunk. And all I need is a bevy of much younger women to take advantage of me. Looking at some of the headlines for tomorrow. Labour in civil war when they should be focusing on the Tories. Absolutely. It's just depressing. Our political opposition isn't quite as bad as the US left for self-destructing spectacularly rather than focusing on the job in hand, but it's up there. It should be an absolute cakewalk to give Boris and the Conservatives a kicking, but somehow they're fucking it up. And it should be an absolute cakewalk to get rid of Trump, and somehow they're fucking it up. It's just crazy. Do I know a good way to wash blood out of clothing? I think it's soda water, isn't it? I did used to know this. Because you don't want to bleach, because... Well, you do want to bleach if you want to destroy DNA evidence. But not if you want to leave physical evidence. Always with the burning with you. And you can buy blood removal products. Ah, right. And they're not all the crime scene ones, because they're used for cleaning up period stains and so on. Hydrogen peroxide, you don't necessarily want to do that because it'll bleach it. Lemon juice, again, you don't necessarily want to do that because it'll bleach it. Some of that oxy stuff that foams up and lifts the blood stains out, that's pretty good for it. The main thing is to get it quickly. Funny thing about blood is that it can actually bleach fabrics itself. So if that's already happened, then you might as well break out the bleach, because that's how you clear up the DNA evidence. Lots of bleach. Mr. Christmas says, are the Lib Dems in with a chance? Not of forming a government by themselves. The most recent projections put them on gaining something like 83 seats total, which would make them the kingmakers, basically. So they would have to go into coalition with another party in order to form a government, which would, in all likelihood, mean Labour, and then the Lib Dems would have to drag Labour more on the Remain side. And they might ask for other concessions, like another crack at electoral reform, proportional representation, hopefully this time not alternative vote, but we'll see. But anything can happen. Did you know that your own saliva can remove your own blood, but no one else's? I did not know that. Is it true? Let's Snopes that shit. You can use saliva to remove bloodstains on silk fabrics. So light fabrics, it's good with that. It's because there's enzymes and things in your spit, but it should work on any blood, not just your own. But it'll probably depend on the pH and so on. So your blood is basically food, so pre-digest that shit, fly style. As for getting rid of a body, there are two really good methods. One, pigs. Two, a rendering plant. Now, a rendering plant is where they take animal carcasses and all kinds of other stuff, and they get ground up to make animal feed. So once a body's been through that, it's virtually impossible to identify anything. It'll grind up bone, muscle, everything, and it'll mix it in with all this other stuff, and then animals will eat it and poop it out. So the odds of you being found out, very, very slim. So, rendering plant. Pigs are cheaper, but you need to keep them hungry. Otherwise, they'll leave bits. And teeth tend to survive pigs. Yeah. Why do I know this stuff? Research for stories. At least that's what to say if the police ask, just so you know. You only scratched yourself and stained your favourite shirt. Did you notice very quickly? Is it a white shirt? If it's a white shirt, then you should be okay with bleach or soda, or if it's been there a while, then your blood may have bleached the shirt. Do I know anyone with a rendering plant? I live in the countryside. I know where there are rendering plants, shall we say. So if you need a body disappeared, hit me up. Well, I'd try spit, try that oxy stuff, and try a very, very hot sort of bleach wash sort of thing. Might work. What do I think MI6 get up to? Whatever they want. Right, I'm going to take a break for a bit, grab an evening snack, and then I'll probably start streaming Greedfall for a couple of hours. So I'll see you then. Take care, everyone. Zang. Where's my mouse pointer? There it is.